The man standing at the construction trailer door looked like he'd been built from concrete and steel. 6'4", 270 pounds, hands the size of dinner plates. His name was Jack Brennan, and for 15 years he'd been foreman on the biggest commercial construction sites in Orange County. Everyone who worked under him knew two things. Jack didn't tolerate laziness, and he didn't hire anyone who couldn't handle the physical demands of real construction work. Irvine, California, Pacific Coast Plaza construction site, August 8, 1973, Wednesday morning, 6:30 a.m. The site sprawled across 10 acres of what would become a mixed-use commercial development, office buildings, retail spaces, parking structures. Right now, it was dirt, rebar, concrete forms, and the skeletal frames of buildings rising into the California sky. The air smelled like diesel fuel, fresh-cut lumber, and the particular dust that comes from cutting concrete. 63 men worked this site: ironworkers, carpenters, concrete finishers, equipment operators. Most had been in construction for decades. They were hard men doing hard work, 10-hour days in the sun, lifting, carrying, building, the kind of labor that separated those who could handle it from those who couldn't. Jack Brennan ran it all with an iron hand. At 46, he'd spent 28 years in construction, started as a laborer at 18, worked his way up. He knew every trade, every technique, every shortcut, and every safety violation. His crews respected him because he could do any job on the site better than most of the men doing it, and they feared him slightly because Jack had a temper when people didn't pull their weight. This particular Wednesday morning, Jack stood outside his trailer reviewing the day's work schedule when his assistant foreman, Mike Torres, approached. "Boss, we got a problem." Jack looked up from his clipboard. "What kind of problem?" "3 guys called in sick. The Ramirez brothers and Thompson all got food poisoning from that taco truck yesterday." Jack cursed. "That's 3 of my best concrete finishers. We're supposed to pour the 3rd-floor deck today." "I know. I called the union hall. They're sending over 3 replacements. Should be here by 7. "Should be? Mike, we start pouring at 8. If they're not here—" "They'll be here. Union guarantees it." Jack wasn't happy, but there was nothing to be done. Union rules were union rules. "Fine. Soon as they show up, get them to the 3rd floor. Brief them on the pour. Make sure they know we're on a tight schedule." 45 minutes later, a beat-up Ford pickup truck pulled into the site. 3 men got out. 2 were typical construction workers, big, weathered, wearing work boots and jeans stained with concrete. The 3rd was different. Average height, lean build, clean work clothes, looked like he weighed maybe 170 pounds. He moved with an easy confidence, but there was nothing about him that screamed construction worker. Mike walked over to meet them. Jack watched from a distance. The conversation lasted a few minutes, Mike pointing, explaining, gesturing toward the 3rd floor. The 2 typical workers nodded. The smaller guy just listened, calm, present. Mike returned to Jack. "Union sent them over. The big guys, Martinez and Chen, they've got experience, done lots of commercial work. And the small one? That's Chuck. He's different." "Different how?" "He's done some construction work, but mostly he teaches martial arts, does some acting. Union sent him because they needed a 3rd body." Jack's expression darkened. "A martial arts teacher, Mike? We're pouring 12 yards of concrete to—" What Jack Brennan didn't know was that the martial arts teacher had spent 5 summers working construction to pay for tournament travel and was about to teach him the difference between size and capability. The pour began at 8 a.m. sharp. A concrete pump truck positioned at ground level, boom extended up to the 3rd floor. Hoses snaked across the deck. The crew moved in practiced coordination, some guiding the flow of concrete, others using screeds and floats to level it, others wheelbarrowing loads to hard-to-reach corners. It was brutal work. 90-degree heat, direct sun, concrete dust in the air. Each wheelbarrow load weighed over 300 pounds. Men were pushing them across rough plywood, fighting against gravity and their own exhaustion. Jack had assigned Chuck to general cleanup, collecting tools, moving empty bags, staying out of the way. Safe work. appropriate for someone without real experience. But an hour into the pour, problems started. Martinez, one of the experienced finishers, slipped on wet concrete. Didn't fall, but twisted his knee badly. Had to be helped off the deck. That left them one man short. Then the pump truck's hydraulic system developed a leak. Had to be shut down for 20 minutes while the operator made repairs. Concrete already on the deck was starting to set. If they didn't finish soon, they'd have cold joints, weak spots in the concrete that would fail inspection. Jack's voice boomed across the site. "Move faster! We're losing time! Chen, get another wheelbarrow going! We need to place this concrete before it sets up!" Chen was already exhausted, pushing his third wheelbarrow load across the deck, arms shaking, sweat pouring. At 240 pounds, he was strong, but the heat and the pace were breaking him down. Chuck had been watching, cleaning tools near the edge of the pour area, but he saw what was happening, saw the crew falling behind, saw men starting to make mistakes from fatigue. He set down his broom, grabbed an empty wheelbarrow, filled it from the pile, lifted the handles. 300 pounds plus. The wheelbarrow came up smoothly. Chuck pushed it across the deck, steady pace, controlled movement, economical effort. Dumped it where the finishers needed it, returned for another load. Jack saw this. "Hey, what are you doing?" "Helping. I told you to do cleanup. This is real work. You'll hurt yourself." "I'm fine." Chuck returned with another full load, then another. His pace was consistent, not fast, not slow, just steady. While the bigger men were grunting and struggling, Chuck moved like it was routine. By the third load, Jack was watching more carefully. The kid's technique was perfect. He wasn't muscling the wheelbarrow, he was balancing it, using his legs and hips, maintaining perfect posture. No wasted energy, no strain visible on his face. Mike Torres noticed too. "Boss, he's keeping pace with Chen, and Chen's been doing this for 15 years. Jack's jaw tightened. He didn't like being wrong. He'll fade. Give him another hour in this heat. But Chuck didn't fade. For 2 hours, he pushed wheelbarrows, load after load. While other men took water breaks, while experienced workers slowed down, Chuck maintained his rhythm, not showing off, not trying to prove anything, just working. By 11:30 a.m., they'd finished the pour. The deck was complete, properly placed, ready for finishing. The crew was exhausted, sitting in whatever shade they could find, drinking water, recovering. Chuck set down his wheelbarrow, grabbed his water bottle, took a long drink. His shirt was soaked with sweat, but he wasn't gasping for air, wasn't collapsed like some of the other men, just done. Jack approached him. "Where'd you learn to push a wheelbarrow like that?" "Worked construction summers during college, paid for tournament travel."
But Jack Brennan wasn't someone who admitted he was wrong easily, and what happened during the lunch break would test both men in unexpected ways. The crew broke for lunch at noon. Most men sat in the shade of partially completed walls, eating sandwiches, complaining about the heat. Jack held court near his trailer, sitting on a cooler, surrounded by his senior crew members. "Did you see that?" one of them asked. "The little guy kept pace with everyone." "He's not that small," another argued. "Maybe 170, 175, but he moves right." Jack was quiet, chewing his sandwich, thinking. One of the iron workers, a massive man named Donovan, spoke up. "Yeah, but wheelbarrows aren't real work. That's just pushing. Wait until he has to do actual heavy lifting, carrying steel beams, setting forms. That's where size matters." Jack looked toward where Chuck sat alone, eating, minding his own business. "You volunteering to test him, Donovan?" "Test him? You're always talking about how size matters, how us big guys do the real work. Here's a chance to prove it. After lunch, we need to move those steel I-beams from the ground to the second floor. 40 feet of vertical elevation, stairs with turns. Donovan, you've done this before. Chuck, you haven't. Donovan will show you how it's done." Donovan was 6'5", 280 pounds, former college football defensive lineman. He'd been carrying steel for 8 years. This was his element. "Simple," Donovan explained, not really to Chuck, but to the growing audience. "Pick up one end, get it on your shoulder, carry it to the stairs. Balance is everything. These beams are top-heavy, and they want to tip. You fight them, you lose. You work with them, you control them." He demonstrated. walked to the first beam, gripped one end, hoisted it onto his shoulder with a grunt. The 20-foot beam extended in front and behind him like a steel seesaw. He took a few steps. The beam wobbled. He corrected, started toward the stairs. The crew watched. This was impressive. 150 pounds, 20 feet long, awkward as hell. Donovan managed it, but it clearly took effort. At the stairs, he had to angle carefully, make turns, fight the beam's tendency to swing. He reached the second floor, set the beam down in position, breathing hard, sweat pouring. Came back down. Your turn, Hollywood. Chuck walked to the second beam, studied it for a moment, gripped one end, lifted. The beam came up smoothly. He positioned it on his shoulder, slightly different angle than Donovan had used. The beam balanced there, stable. He walked toward the stairs, no wobble, no fighting. The beam moved with him like it was an extension of his body. At the stairs, he adjusted his angle in one smooth motion, took the turns without struggle, reached the second floor, set the beam down precisely where it needed to be. He came back down, not breathing hard, ready for the next one. Donovan's smile faded. Lucky placement. They continued, beam after beam, Donovan fighting each one, using raw strength to overpower the awkwardness. Chuck moving economically, finding balance points, letting the beam work with him instead of against him. By the 10th beam, Donovan was struggling. His shoulder was raw from the steel, his legs were shaking, his breath came in gasps. Chuck maintained his pace, steady, controlled, efficient.
But what Jack Brennan saw in those 45 minutes changed his entire understanding of what made someone a good construction worker. After the 15th beam, Donovan stopped. "I need a break. We've got 5 more," Jack said. "I know. Give me 5 minutes." He sat heavily on a pile of lumber. His shoulder was bleeding slightly where the steel had rubbed through his shirt. His hands were shaking. Chuck was already hoisting the 16th beam, carried it up, came back, loaded the 17th. Donovan watched, something like disbelief on his face. How is he doing that? Mike Torres answered. "Technique. Look at his posture. He's using his whole body. You're trying to muscle them. He's balancing them." "I've been doing this for 8 years. I know how to carry steel." "You know how to force it. There's a difference." Chuck returned from the 17th beam, saw Donovan sitting. "You want help with the last 3? "I can handle it." But when Donovan tried to stand, his legs nearly gave out. The heat, the exertion, the ego-driven pace he'd set trying to match Chuck, it had broken him down. Jack made a decision. "Donovan, you're done. Go get water. Chuck, finish the last 3. "Boss," Donovan started. "That wasn't a request. You're overheated and you're hurt. I'm not having you pass out carrying steel. Go." Donovan limped away, humiliated. The crew watched in silence. Chuck finished the last 3 beams. Same steady pace. No celebration, no showboating, just work. When he came down from the final beam, Jack was waiting. "How much construction work did you really do?" 5 summers, general labor mostly. Some carpentry, some concrete, whatever needed doing. "And the martial arts?" "I teach Tong Soo Do, run a school in Torrance, compete internationally when I can." "The strength for this work, that comes from martial arts?" "Some, but mostly it comes from understanding body mechanics, how to move efficiently, how to use leverage instead of force. Same principles apply whether you're fighting or working." Jack looked at his crew. They were all watching this conversation, waiting to see how their foreman would respond. "I owe you an apology," Jack said. "Not loud, but loud enough for everyone to hear. I assumed because you were smaller, because you did martial arts, that you couldn't handle real work. I was wrong." "You didn't know. Most people make that assumption." "Yeah, but I should know better. I've been in construction long enough to know that the biggest guy isn't always the best worker. Technique matters. Intelligence matters. Efficiency matters." Chuck nodded. "Size helps, but it's not everything. You outworked one of my best steelmen, and you did it without destroying your body. That's something I need to think about." What Jack Brennan did next surprised everyone on the site and changed how he approached construction work for the rest of his career. That evening, after the shift ended, Jack asked Chuck to stay behind. They sat in the trailer, door open to catch the evening breeze. The site was empty now, just two men and the skeletal buildings around them. "Can I ask you something?" Jack said. "Sure." "That technique you used today, the way you carried those beams, pushed those wheelbarrows, could you teach that?" Chuck looked at him. "Teach it?" "Yeah, to my crew. I've got guys destroying their backs, their knees, their shoulders. Men in their 40s who won't make it to 50 if they keep working the way they're working, using pure strength for everything, fighting against the materials instead of working with them. It's possible, but it takes time. You have to unlearn habits. Most experienced workers have been doing things the hard way for so long, it feels natural." "How long would it take?" "Depends on the person. Some people get it quickly. Others resist. They think struggling equals working hard, that if it doesn't hurt, they're not doing it right." Jack nodded. "I've been that person. 28 years in construction. I'm 6'4", 270 pounds. I've always used my size, just powered through things. And now my back's shot. My knees are bad. I take pain medication every night just to sleep." "How old are you?" 46. Should have another 20 years of work in me. But honestly, I don't know if my body can handle 5 more. Chuck was quiet for a moment. "You want to learn this for yourself, not just for your crew. Is that selfish?" "No, it's smart. You can't teach what you don't understand, and your crew will respect it more if they see you practicing what you're preaching. So you'll do it? Teach us?" "How long am I here for?" "We've got 4 more weeks on this phase of the project. Then there's a 2-week break before we start the next phase. After that, another 3 months of work." "I can work with that, but I need commitment from you and from anyone who wants to learn. This isn't a one-time demonstration. It's daily practice, starting with basics." Jack extended his hand. "You've got it." They shook. The handshake was firm, respectful.
Over the next 4 weeks, something remarkable happened on that construction site, and it changed the culture of how work was done. Chuck arrived every day at 6:15 a.m., before the official start time. He'd set up in a clear area of the site and run a 15-minute session. Basic principles, proper lifting technique, balance, breathing, how to engage your core, how to use your legs instead of your back. At first, only a few guys showed up. Jack was there every day, Mike Torres, a couple of younger workers curious about martial arts. The older, more experienced workers stayed away. They'd been doing this work for decades. They didn't need some karate teacher telling them how to lift. But people started noticing changes. Jack's back pain decreased. He was moving better, lifting smarter. The younger guys who attended the sessions were showing the same improvements, less fatigue at the end of the day, fewer complaints about sore muscles. After the first week, more workers started showing up. After 2 weeks, 20 men were attending the morning sessions. By week 3, almost the entire crew. Chuck taught them principles that applied directly to their work. How to lift heavy objects close to your body's center of gravity. How to turn your whole body instead of twisting your spine. How to breathe properly during exertion. How to recognize when you're using force instead of leverage. One morning, he demonstrated on Donovan. The big steel worker had been skeptical, embarrassed by the beam-carrying incident, but he showed up to the session anyway. "Donovan, pick me up like you're lifting a bag of concrete." Donovan grabbed Chuck around the waist, lifted with his back. It was awkward, inefficient. Chuck wasn't helping, just dead weight. Donovan managed it, but it clearly strained him. "Now do it again, but this time get close. Bend your knees, keep your back straight, lift with your legs." Donovan adjusted his position, tried again. This time Chuck came up smoothly, easier, less strain. "Feel the difference?" "Yeah, it's lighter." "It's not lighter. You're using stronger muscles. Your legs can lift more than your back. Your back is for stability, not power."
The crew watched. Understanding dawned on faces. This wasn't mystical martial arts nonsense. This was practical body mechanics that made their jobs easier. By week 4, the culture of the site had shifted. Men were helping each other with technique, correcting each other's form, taking breaks not because they were exhausted, but because Chuck had taught them that strategic rest was more efficient than powering through until you collapsed. Injury rates dropped. Productivity increased. The crew that had been falling behind schedule was suddenly ahead of it.
But the real test came when a crisis hit the site, and Chuck's training saved someone's life. Week 3, Thursday afternoon, they were setting steel beams for the 4th floor using a crane. Standard procedure: crane lifts the beam, ground crew guides it. Workers on the 4th floor bolted into place. A beam was being lifted. 800 pounds of steel, 40 feet long. It was halfway up when the crane's load cable started to slip, not catastrophically, just a few inches, but enough to make the beam swing. Mike Torres was directly below it, didn't see it happening, was focused on guiding a different beam. Chuck saw it, saw the beam swinging, saw Mike's position, calculated the angles in an instant. He ran, not toward safety, toward Mike. Other workers were shouting warnings, "Mike, move, move!" But Mike was in his own world, focused on his task. The shouts didn't register fast enough. Chuck hit him at full speed, a controlled collision. He wrapped Mike up, drove him sideways. They both went down hard, rolling across the deck. The swinging beam crashed down exactly where Mike had been standing. 800 pounds of steel hitting concrete with a sound like a gunshot. Silence. Everyone frozen. Then rushing toward Mike and Chuck. They were both on the ground. Mike was dazed, not understanding what had just happened. Chuck was already sitting up, checking Mike for injuries. "You okay?" What happened?" "Beam slipped. You were under it. Had to move you." Mike looked at where he'd been standing, saw the beam, the dent it made in the concrete deck. His face went white. Jack was there now, dropping to his knees. "Mike, talk to me. You hurt?" I don't think so. Chuck, you..." "I saw it coming, had time to react." "You saved my life." The crew was gathering now, everyone talking at once. The crane operator was climbing down, panicked. The site safety officer was running over. Jack helped both men to their feet, checked them over. Mike had a bruised shoulder from the tackle. Chuck had scraped his elbow on the concrete. Nothing serious. But the beam would have killed Mike, no question. 800 pounds from 20 feet up, fatal impact. Jack looked at Chuck. "How did you see that? The beam was behind you." "Peripheral vision, awareness. It's what we train in martial arts. You don't just look at one thing, you watch everything." Most people would have frozen or just shouted a warning. Warning wouldn't have been enough. Mike needed to be moved, so I moved him. "You put yourself in danger." "Less danger than Mike was in. I had angles, position. I could control the outcome." Jack's eyes were wet. Mike Torres had worked for him for 7 years, was a friend, not just an employee. "I owe you. We all owe you." "You don't owe me anything. Mike's part of the crew. That's what crews do. Look out for each other." 3 months later, at the project completion ceremony, Jack Brennan gave a speech that would be remembered by everyone who worked that site. The Pacific Coast Plaza was finished. The buildings were occupied. The developer had thrown a party for all the contractors and workers. Open bar, catered food, speeches from executives. When it was Jack's turn to speak, he stood at the podium looking uncomfortable. Public speaking wasn't his thing, but he had something to say. "I've been in construction 28 years. I thought I knew what made a good worker. Size, strength, toughness, the ability to power through anything. Then a guy half my size showed up on my site and changed everything. Chuck Norris was sent by the union as a last-minute replacement. I didn't want him, thought he was too small, too Hollywood, too soft for real construction work. I was wrong about everything. He outworked men twice his size, not because he was stronger, because he was smarter, because he understood body mechanics, because he used technique instead of force. And then he taught that technique to the rest of us, changed how we work, how we think about work, reduced our injury rate by 60%, increased our productivity by 20%, made all of us better at our jobs. But more than that, he saved Mike Torres's life, saw a danger that the rest of us missed, had the awareness, the speed, the courage to act. Mike's standing here today because Chuck didn't freeze, because his training made him capable of doing what needed to be done. I'm a better foreman now because of Chuck, better at my job, better at taking care of my crew, and my back doesn't hurt anymore. The crowd laughed at that last part. I'm saying all this because I want you to understand something. The best worker isn't always the biggest. The best fighter isn't always the toughest looking. Real competence, real skill comes from understanding, from intelligence, from training. And I'm grateful, truly grateful that Chuck was patient enough to teach that to an old, stubborn foreman who thought he knew everything. The applause was genuine, long. Chuck, sitting at a table in the back, looked embarrassed by the attention. After the speeches, Jack found him. You didn't have to stay for this. Wanted to see the finished building. We built something good. We did, thanks to you. I pushed some wheelbarrows and carried some steel. The crew did the real work. You know that's not true. You changed the culture, changed how we think. That's bigger than any building. Chuck nodded. You going to keep using the techniques? Every day, and I'm teaching them at other sites now. Word's spreading. Other foremen want to learn. The union's even talking about making it part of apprentice training. That's good. Fewer injuries, longer careers. All because you showed up and proved that size isn't everything, that intelligence and technique matter more. They shook hands. Then Jack pulled Chuck into a brief hug. Construction workers aren't usually demonstrative, but some things require more than a handshake. The final word came from Chuck Norris himself in a 2003 interview about unexpected lessons from his pre-Hollywood days. The interviewer asked, "What's your most memorable non-martial arts experience?" Chuck smiled. "Work in construction in the early 70s. Union sent me as a last-minute replacement. Foreman didn't want me, thought I was too small, too Hollywood, too soft for real construction work. I was wrong about everything." The interviewer asked, "What happened?" "I worked hard, showed him that technique matters more than size, that understanding body mechanics makes difficult work easier. He was skeptical at first, but he saw the results, started asking questions, wanted to learn." "Did you stay in construction?" "Just that one project, 4 months, but it impacted me deeply. These were men doing brutally hard physical labor, destroying their bodies because they thought suffering was part of the job. I showed them it didn't have to be that way, that working smart was better than working hard." The interviewer asked, "What did you learn?" "That martial arts principles apply everywhere. Balance, efficiency, awareness. These aren't just fighting concepts, they're life concepts, work concepts." The foreman, Jack Brennan, he understood that, changed his entire approach, kept his crew safer, gave them longer careers, and he taught other people, spread the knowledge. That's what teaching is supposed to do, plant seeds that grow beyond you. The interviewer asked, "Do you still see him?" "He retired in the 90s. We exchanged cards at Christmas. Last I heard, he was consulting with construction companies on ergonomics and injury prevention, teaching the next generation of foremen, still spreading those principles we worked on 30 years ago." The story of Chuck Norris and Jack Brennan became legend in Southern California construction circles, not because of dramatic confrontations, but because of transformation. A foreman who learned that pride and toughness was less valuable than intelligence in tech.